Yeah, I'm just reading a resolution that was sent to me, European Parliament resolution. It was sent to me, it was agreed on the 1st of the 6th, 2021, that relates to the impact of offshore renewable energy on fishers and the marine environment. And this motion was adopted, it was recommended by the rapporteur and so on. And what it basically says, to cut a long story short, is that the development of, notwithstanding the commitment of the European Union to develop its offshore renewable resources, that it should not do so in such a way that would displace fishers or do things that could potentially damage the marine environment. Now, and it says that the precautionary principle should apply. In other words, where we're not sure what the impact might be, the precautionary principle should apply. And I think that is absolutely right. And, you know, it's very clear in this resolution, the commitment to developing our offshore renewable resources, the priority and urgency of doing it, but it is also equally clear in saying it shouldn't damage communities that, you know, would have a close connection to the area, where social or economic activities, if you like, could be potentially damaged by a particular type of development. And they cite things such as the reef effect that can sometimes accompany establishing these offshore wind farms. There's potential for a reef effect. So another reefs are created as a result of putting these things, which can have very, very significant far-reaching impact on marine life, on fish and so on, and consequently on those who make their livelihood for fishing. They also refer very specifically to the electromagnetic impact of cables, even cables that are buried underground, and how they can then impact on marine life. Now, the whole sort of predication of this amendment is that a developer can come along and say, I'm going to put forward a planning application, but certain details of that planning application I can't actually give you now. And then what I actually develop may be different to the thing that I applied for. And the particular grounds that they've given for this is the rapid advance of technology. But when you consider the issues at stake here, that makes you even more worried. Because the rapid advance of a technology, if we've already established, and pile driving is another thing they mention, and the potential impact on particular marine environments, precisely the advance of those technologies could have all sorts of spin-off consequences in terms of their impact on marine life, because the new technology may have different effects from the old technology. It may have more impact in terms of what type of pile driving they do, or the technology they use to do pile driving, or create reefs, or damage fish, you know, the particular routes that fish take and so on, or whether the fish will continue to inhabit that area. And in fact, when I talk to the fishers in the areas where a lot of these legacy projects, relevant projects in the near coastal area off the east coast, some of which will be as close as 8 and 10 kilometres out on things like the Kish Bank, the Codling Bank and so on, which are spawning grounds for fish and all the rest of it, they're actually convinced, and this is alluded to in the European Parliament motion is that actually it's just not compatible with the continuation of fishing in those areas at all. That they'll be gone. They will be gone from those areas, which are their traditional fishing grounds. Now, that's bad enough as it is, but if the application is open-ended as to what technology it may use for the construction of these things, or the type of cables they use and the impact that they could potentially have on particular marine environments, on fish and all the rest of it, the idea that it could be open-ended on the basis of new technology is more worrying. So I'm not convinced this is necessary or justified. I am most certainly not convinced that there's any justification for it in terms of large-scale residential development on land. I don't see the need for that at all. That's definitely been lobbied by someone. And I repeat what I said earlier on about SHDs and the shambles that they turned out to be. And that was all about, I mean, the SHD legislation was written by the developers, and I strongly suspect this open-ended type of planning application, which can change further on down the line and therefore bypass the proper stakeholder consultations, public participation, environmental impact assessments potentially, in terms of large-scale residential developments. I just do not see the justification for that, and I'd like the Minister to explain what are the circumstances in which a developer might put an application in for a large-scale residential development and not give all the details of that development. But then, further down the line, things change. I just don't see the justification for that. And arguably it breaches environmental impact assessment directives and so on. But similarly, in terms of the offshore, it's very, very concerning. On Tashka, who went to the trouble of writing to all of us, I think, this morning, are pretty clear in their view. This raises serious concerns around environmental impact assessment, the Habitats Directive, public participation, etc. There are simpler, legally compliant and more effective ways to address these challenges without creating the legal and procedural problems of the proposed approach. And we need to discuss that. But we're not going to discuss it, really, it's going to be a short-circuited discussion, and it's going to be rammed through. Rammed through at whose behest, as a result of whose lobbying? Somebody's. Somebody demanded or requested that this was put in, and the government have bowed to that lobbying. And we don't even know who the lobbyists are, but it doesn't take much to guess that it's the developers, on land and offshore. So I am deeply opposed to these. They should be, at the very least, very seriously scrutinised, or they should be withdrawn from this legislation. Yeah, it's more sharp practice with potentially very, very damaging environmental, social and economic and indeed cultural implications.